Welcome to the world of science fiction story, and don't forget to like, subscribe and share the channel. Enjoy the listening. I saw a human. I understood what my species had been missing for millennia. My name is Nyth Vexer, third-tier xenobiologist aboard the concordant research vessel Endless Inquiry. Among my kind, the Svari, I am considered quite accomplished. Our species has mapped 17 galaxies, developed quantum displacement technology, and cultivated a civilization spanning over 12,000 cycles. Yet for all our advancement, we remain fundamentally untouched. I press my six-fingered hand against the transparent alloy of the observation deck, gazing at the blue-green planet below. Earth, home of humanity. The warmth of my palm creates a slight condensation on the otherwise impeccably clear barrier. This small evidence of my physical existence, this momentary mark, is more intimacy than I have experienced with another being in decades. The Salvari do not touch. It is not our way. Specialist Vexara, the ship's communication system announces, the human diplomatic party will arrive in precisely 43 minutes. Your presence is requested in docking bay 7 for initial biological security protocols. I acknowledge with a simple thought pulse. The neural interface embedded in my cranial ridge registers my affirmation and transmits it through the ship's network. No words needed. No touch required. Efficient, sterile, perfect, and hollow. We discovered humanity entirely by accident. Our long-range cultural analysis probes detected their entertainment broadcasts first. Decades of signals radiating outward from their world. The Supreme Concordant was fascinated by their stories, particularly by the peculiar importance they placed on physical proximity. Humans in their fictional narratives were constantly touching, pressing palms, wrapping limbs around one another, connecting their facial orifices in what they call kissing. How strange they seemed to us, how primitive and yet compelling. I moved through the corridors of our ship, my robe flowing around my slender frame. The fabric never touches my silvery blue skin directly, it hovers precisely 2 millimeters away, suspended by micro-repulsors. Even our clothing does not embrace us. The first direct communication with humanity occurred just 3 cycles ago. The Supreme Concordant was initially concerned about potential contamination, not biological but cultural. A species so focused on physicality might disrupt our carefully ordered civilization. But curiosity prevailed, it always does with the Svari. Knowledge acquisition is one of our few genuine passions. Now here I am about to meet actual humans face to face, or whatever the appropriate expression would be considering the profound anatomical differences between our species. I arrive at the decontamination chamber adjacent to docking bay 7. Several other specialists are already present, including Morida Gen, my direct superior. Nyth, he acknowledges with a slight inclination of his head. You've reviewed the protocols? Yes, Director. I understand our visitors have been thoroughly briefed on Svari customs. Indeed. They know not to attempt physical contact, though I worry their instincts may overcome their training. Moroda's facial ridges pulse with subtle bioluminescence, indication of mild anxiety. Humans appear to have a compulsion for this handshaking ritual. I nod, though privately I wonder what such a greeting might feel like. The Svari evolved from solitary hunters on a world of scarce resources and abundant predators. Touch for us historically meant either violence or mating, nothing in between. Over millennia, we engineered such base instincts out of ourselves. We developed telepathic interfaces, field projection technology, and eventually neural networks that eliminated the need for physical contact entirely. We conquered our worlds. We conquered the stars. We conquered our body's desires. And something essential died along the way. The decontamination process begins. A soft hum fills the chamber as quantum scanners analyze and catalog every molecule in my body. Some part of me wonders if these machines can detect the emptiness I carry within, the void that centuries of intellectual advancement have failed to fill. The integration team believes the humans may be useful for several of our ongoing projects, Morix continues. Their cognitive architecture is dramatically different from ours. They possess remarkable adaptive capabilities despite their primitive technology. Yes, Director. I've studied their psychological profiles extensively. What I don't mention is how I've spent countless hours analyzing human concepts that have no parallel in Svari language, words like loneliness, intimacy, touch-starved. Their languages are filled with references to physical connection as metaphor, getting in touch, handling the situation, grasping an idea. Their cognition seems fundamentally rooted in their embodied experience. How would it feel, I wonder, to be held? To have another being's skin pressed against mine without the sterile barrier of proximity fields? The thought both terrifies and exhilarates me. The decontamination process completes. The chamber door dilates, revealing the docking bay beyond. 5 other Svari specialists are already arranged in the traditional greeting formation, a perfect hexagon with precisely calculated spacing between each individual. I take my position, completing the pattern. We wait in perfect, practiced silence. Human vessel docking sequence initiated, the ship's systems announce. Through the massive transparent barrier separating the bay from the vacuum of space, I watch their shuttle approach. It's crude by our standards, all angles and visible propulsion technology. Our vessels grow organically, their living metal hulls smooth and seamless. But there's something compelling about human engineering, a certain determination in its ungainly functionality. The docking mechanisms engage. Air pressure normalizes. The massive doors part, and there they are, 5 humans in their environmental suits, standing much closer to one another than any Svari would tolerate. Even through their protective gear, I can see how different they are, varied in height, coloration, physical structure. We Salvari are nearly identical, our appearance is regulated by genetic standardization protocols established thousands of cycles ago. The human in front removes their helmet first. Thick tendrils of dark material, hair, according to our databases, cascade around a face dominated by 2 forward-facing eyes of the most startling shade of amber. The human's mouth curves upward in what our xenopsychologists identify as a smile, a gesture of non-aggression. Greetings, representatives of the Svari Concordat, the human says, their voice carries strange harmonics, unnecessary vibrations that create what humans call warmth. I am Commander Tavish Kalani of Earth United. We are honored by your invitation and hopeful for a productive cultural exchange. Our delegation leader, Supreme Specialist Oral, responds with appropriate formality. Protocol dictates I remain silent, observing, but I cannot tear my gaze from the human called Tavish Kalani. There is something in those amber eyes, something I have never seen in the eyes of my own kind. A hunger perhaps, but not for knowledge or advancement or efficiency. A hunger for connection. And suddenly I understand, my own hunger has a name. The formal introductions proceeded according to protocol, yet I found myself increasingly distracted. My scientific training should have kept me focused on observing the biological and behavioral patterns of our human guests. Instead, I kept returning to Commander Tavish Kalani's hands, 5-fingered, broader than ours, with fascinating microstructures called fingerprints that our scans had detected. Hands that touch things directly, without barriers. Specialist Vexara will guide you through our biological research facilities, Supreme Specialist ORL announced, startling me from my unprofessional reverie. She is our foremost expert on comparative xenobiology. Commander Kalani's gaze met mine directly, another human custom that felt intensely invasive yet somehow thrilling. Svari typically avoid direct eye contact except in the most formal circumstances. It creates too much intimacy. We look forward to learning from you, Specialist, Kalani said, those amber eyes seemingly peering beyond my carefully constructed professional facade. The exchange of knowledge serves efficiency, I responded with the traditional Svari acknowledgement, but the words felt hollow, a rehearsed response from a script I had followed my entire life without questioning. As our delegation dispersed, I found myself alone with 3 of the humans, Commander Kalani, a shorter female called Dr. Ravasi Anoro, and a broad-shouldered male introduced as Security Chief Brenton Company. They stood close together, their environmental suits now removed to reveal what they called uniforms, form-fitting garments that accentuated rather than concealed their physical forms. "This way," I said, gesturing toward the biological research sector. "Our facilities may interest you." We moved through corridors designed for Svari aesthetics, muted colors, perfect symmetry, and absolute silence. The humans' footsteps echoed unnaturally in spaces designed to absorb sound. Even their breathing seemed loud, vital, insistent. "Forgive me for asking," Dr. Anoro said as we walked, her voice melodious with unfamiliar inflections, "but I notice none of you make physical contact. Is this a cultural preference or a biological necessity?" The question was expected. Our briefings had anticipated human curiosity about this aspect of Salvari society. Still, I hesitated before answering. "Both," I finally replied. "Our neural systems are highly sensitive. Direct contact between Svari can create overwhelming sensory feedback. Additionally, our historical development as a species favored minimal physical interaction outside of necessary biological functions." "Fascinating," Dr. Endoro murmured. "So you never touch? Not even in intimate relationships?" I felt an unfamiliar heat rise to my facial ridges. Reproduction is carefully managed through genetic repositories. Direct coupling became obsolete approximately 4,000 cycles ago. "But surely there must be some form of closeness," Commander Kalani asked, his tone genuinely curious rather than judgmental. I paused before the entrance to the laboratory, considering how to explain concepts that were so fundamental to Salvari existence yet seemingly incomprehensible to humans. "We share neural connections," I explained, "through our implants. We can transfer thoughts, sensations, and data directly from mind to mind. It is considered a superior form of connection, precise, efficient, and without the messiness of physical interaction." "But entirely controlled," Security Chief Ko observed quietly. "Each thought carefully selected and edited before transmission." His insight was unexpectedly perceptive. I found myself uncharacteristically flustered, unable to formulate the standard response about the superiority of ordered communication. "Shall we continue?" I gestured toward the laboratory doors, which parted silently at our approach. Inside, the research facility hummed with quiet activity. Several of my colleagues worked at various stations, surrounded by holographic displays of genetic sequences and neural mappings. The humans gazed around with undisguised wonder at technology that I had taken for granted for decades. "This is incredible, Dr. Anoro breathed, approaching a suspended three-dimensional model of what humans would call a brain, though it was actually a synthetic neural network we had developed for interspecies communication experiments. We'd been attempting to create interfaces that would allow direct communication with non-Svari species, I explained, grateful to return to familiar scientific territory. Your visit presents a unique opportunity to test our latest prototypes." Commander Kalani approached the display, his hand hovering just above the holographic surface. "Would it be possible for humans to experience this neural connection you described?" The question sent an unexpected thrill through my body. I had considered this possibility extensively in my private research but had never dared to propose it formally. "Theoretically, yes," I replied carefully, "but our neural patterns are significantly different. The experience would not be identical to Svari connection." "Different how?" he asked, those amber eyes fixed on mine again. I swallowed, a rarely used physical response to emotional stimuli. "Less controlled. More raw. Our filters and barriers might not function properly with human neural architecture." Something changed in Commander Kalani's expression, a subtle shift that our xenopsychologists might spend cycles analyzing. "That sounds fascinating rather than concerning, specialist." "Vexer. You may call me NYTH," I said, breaking protocol so flagrantly that I heard a sharp intake of breath from my colleague across the room. "If you wish," I added hastily. "Nytich," he repeated, the name sounding foreign yet somehow right in his human pronunciation. "And I'm Tavish." The use of personal names outside a formal introduction was uncommon among Svari. Such familiarity suggested a level of connection reserved for those who had shared neural links for decades. Yet here was this human, casually offering such intimacy within minutes of our meeting. "Would you be willing to attempt such a connection?" I asked, my scientific curiosity suddenly indistinguishable from something more personal. "It would provide invaluable data." Director Moraida Jen chose that moment to enter the laboratory, his facial ridges pulsing with alarmed luminescence. "Specialist Vexara, a word." I excused myself and followed him to a private communication alcove. "Your behavior is concerning," he said without preamble. "You appear to be developing inappropriate interest in the human representatives." "I am pursuing valuable research opportunities," I countered, surprising myself with my defiance. "The human commander watches you with undue attention," Moraida continued. "It creates disharmony in the delegation. Remember your training, Nyth. These humans are temporary visitors. Their presence here is a scientific opportunity, nothing more." I nodded, the proper response to a superior's correction, but internally something had shifted, a rebellion against thousands of cycles of Svari conditioning. "I understand, Director. I will maintain appropriate distance." When I returned to the humans, I found Commander Kalani, Tavish, examining a series of genetic sequences displayed on a floating screen. "These appear to be comparative analyses," he observed. "Human and Svari DNA?" "Yes," I replied, keeping my tone neutral and professional despite the inner turmoil. "Despite our obvious physical differences, there are fascinating commonalities in our basic genetic structures." "Convergent evolution across galaxies," Dr. Anoro commented. "The universe apparently has limited ways to build intelligent life." "Or perhaps," Security Chief Ko suggested, "intelligence itself creates certain physical demands that lead to similar solutions." Their casual philosophical discussion, so different from the rigid formalized debates of Svari academic discourse, fascinated me. Humans seem to throw ideas into the air like seeds, caring little where they landed or what grew from them. "What about this research?" Tavish asked, gesturing toward a sealed chamber at the far end of the laboratory. "That appears to be cellular regeneration technology." I hesitated, uncertain how to explain the project without revealing too much. "Yes, we are exploring methods to enhance cellular receptivity." "For what purpose?" he pressed, those amber eyes seeming to see through my careful evasion. The truth escaped before I could formulate a more appropriate response: to experience touch again. The words hung in the air between us, dangerous and thrilling. I had just revealed one of our most classified research projects, the attempt by certain progressive Svari scientists to reverse millennia of evolutionary and cultural conditioning. I stared at Tavish's outstretched hand for what felt like an eternity. My entire being seemed suspended between two realities, the ordered, sterile world of Svari existence I had always known, and something new, chaotic and terrifyingly alive. "I cannot," I finally whispered, my voice barely audible even to myself. But I didn't move away. Tavish nodded, no disappointment visible in his expression. He lowered his hand slowly, maintaining that intense amber gaze. "Understanding takes time. We have that luxury, at least. The diplomatic mission is scheduled for 21 Earth days. 21 rotational cycles of this small planet, a mere moment in the span of a Svari lifetime. Yet suddenly it felt both too brief and unbearably long. Perhaps," offered Dr. Anoro, her tone gentle, "we could discuss the differences in our sensory experiences in a more formal context. A scientific exchange rather than a demonstration." Her suggestion provided welcome structure, a return to familiar territory. "Yes, that would be appropriate." We have dedicated research spaces for such discussions. As we continued the tour, I found myself hyper-aware of Tavish, his proximity. Though he maintained a perfectly acceptable distance by Svari standards, something about his physical presence seemed to create a gravitational field that distorted my normally precise thoughts. Your species communicates through neural interfaces, Security Chief Ko observed as we entered the main research hub, yet you still maintain verbal communication capabilities. Why? Evolutionary vestige, I explained, grateful for the technical question, and practical necessity when interacting with non-Svari species or in situations where neural connectivity is compromised. Neural communication is considered superior, more precise, more efficient, Tavish commented, but less spontaneous. Less authentic, perhaps. His observation struck uncomfortably close to thoughts I had entertained in my most private moments, thoughts that would be considered dangerously aberrant among my peers. Authenticity is a subjective value, I replied, reciting what was essentially Svari doctrine. Precision in communication eliminates misunderstanding. Does it? Dr. Anoro asked, her dark eyes thoughtful. Or does it simply eliminate the unexpected, the spontaneous insights that arise from imperfect understanding? Before I could formulate a response, Director Morix appeared again, accompanied by two other senior researchers. The Supreme Concordat has requested a demonstration of human auditory communication patterns, he announced. Specialist Vexera, please escort our guests to Chamber 12. Chamber 12, the Immersive Sensory Laboratory. My pulse quickened involuntarily. Of course, Director, I acknowledged, ignoring the subtle warning pulses from his facial ridges. We moved through the corridor. I found myself walking closer to Tavish than strict protocol would dictate. Chamber 12 contains our most advanced sensory mapping technology, I explained. It was designed to record and analyze communications across multiple spectrums simultaneously. Sounds fascinating, Tavish replied. Then, lowering his voice slightly, he added, you seem troubled, NYTH. The use of my personal name sent an unexpected shiver along my neural pathways. I am conflicted, I admitted, surprising myself with this confession. Your presence here has raised questions I had previously suppressed. About touch. About connection, he clarified. About the price we Salvari have paid for our advancement. We arrived at Chamber 12, a spherical room with walls composed of neural responsive material. The other researchers were already configuring the equipment for human subjects. We will record various forms of human communication, Director Morix explained to our guests. Voice patterns, facial expressions, pheromone releases, subtle body movements. This will enhance our translation matrices and cultural understanding. We're happy to assist, Dr. Endoro replied. What would you like us to communicate about? Content is irrelevant, stated one of the senior researchers. We are interested in pattern and form, not substance. Tavish caught my gaze across the room. Perhaps not entirely irrelevant, he suggested. Different topics evoke different emotional states, which would affect the communication patterns you're studying. A valid observation, I agreed before Morix could object. Perhaps a range of conversational topics would provide more comprehensive data. The senior researchers consulted briefly through their neural implants, a flicker of bioluminescence the only external sign of their exchange.